This ballet is a rendering in sound and vision of the peasant soul, in its gravity, in its deliberate and simple-minded intricacy, in its subtly varied rhythms and deep undercurrents of excitement. Those were the words of the famous novelist Herbert George Wells, H.G. Wells. He wrote them in an open letter after he had seen Igor Stravinsky's ballet, Svadebka, known by its French title, Les Noces, in English, The Wedding. He'd been to a performance in London in 1926, which was just 3 years after the ballet had premiered on June the 13th, 1923, at the Théâtre de la Gaieté Lyrique in Paris. He had understood it most profoundly. Stravinsky, having long ago left his regular position with the Ballets Russes, had returned to compose another astonishingly original and innovative work for Sergei Diaghilev. And he was bringing to fruition an evocation of a deeply Russian peasant theme which he had in fact first thought of 12 years earlier, in 1911, and he'd first started to write it in 1913. In the publication Expositions and Developments, Stravinsky described the ballet to Robert Kraft as a suite of typical wedding episodes told through quotations of typical talk. The latter, whether the brides, the parents, or the guests, is always ritualistic. As a collection of clichés and typical wedding sayings, it might be compared to one of those scenes in Ulysses, in which the reader seems to be overhearing scraps of conversations without the connecting threads of discourse. This extraordinarily original music, scored for 4 solo singers, a mixed chorus, 4 pianos, and a large array of percussion, brings to life the realistic and traditional atmosphere of a Russian folk peasant wedding, with a combination of declamatory speech-like rhythms and modernistic irregular dance rhythms. Mixed in with the bustle and buoyant excitement of the occasion are the deep sadness the bride's family are feeling at having to lose their loved one to the bridegroom, and also the apprehension the bride herself is feeling. She is marrying as her duty.
Avec la
Les Noces is divided into 4 scenes. In the 3rd scene, the departure of the bride, the mothers of the bride and the bridegroom together sing, "My own dear one, child of mine, little one, my little one, do not leave me, my dear one. Come again to me, my little one. Do not leave me lonely. Come back, my dear one. Child, have you forgot, dear one? The golden keys are hanging there, my own little child, dear one." Yet again, a completely new kind of music from Igor Stravinsky, and yet again, a completely new kind of choreography. Branislava Nijinska, Václav Nijinsky's sister, who was now to be a major figure in the Ballets Russes, called forth challenging new kinds of ritualistically symbolic movements for the dancers. And there were strikingly dark and sombre sets and realistically traditional peasant costumes from the avant-garde futurist sculptress, painter and designer Natalia Goncharova. With all this and Anastasia in the pit, in Les Noces, Diaghilev had once again brought together the most amazing array of genius for a collaboration of great new originality. It was one of the very first experiences that one of Diaghilev's latest and very young new dancers never forgot. Serge Liffard, later in 1940, recalled how the powerful sounds enthralled me, swept me on, thrilled me with their mysteries, their timelessness.
Most people would agree it's one of the all-time masterpieces, and as a ballet too, for all sorts of reasons. I mean, not least because of the actual sound of the work. I mean, as we know, it took Stravinsky 10 years to get the right sound that he wanted. I mean, he tried player pianos, he tried all sorts of things, until he came up with the idea of 4 pianos and percussion. And it has, I think it's fair to say, a new hardness about it. Les Noces is a hard piece in all senses. I mean, it is psychologically hard too. It may be about a wedding, but I mean, it's not a celebration. This is a farewell to innocence, a farewell to youth, farewell to one's parents. And, you know, the wedding night is not going to be a bed of roses for the bride, by the looks of things.
there's a great sense of loss, a sense of cultural loss, which is quite possibly what deepened in the years of the late teens and the early 1920s. As one might say, the self-imposed exile became necessary exile. In other words, that he could never go home. I also think there's, in the case of Nijinsky, who created one of her most perfect works with Les Noces, again, a sense of loss, but in particular, a woman's sense of loss, the bride's sense of loss, the loss of a family, without any possibility of rage, of expression of rage. So I think it's a deeply moving work.
In the final scene of Les Noces, it is time for the bride and her new husband to go to their bed. Dear heart, little wife, my own dearest treasure, my sweet, my honey, dearest flower and treasure of mine, fairest flower, sweetest wife, let us live in happiness, so that all men may envy us. The best man and the female matchmaker lead the young couple to the bedroom and close the door. When I first played Les Noces to Diaghilev in 1915 at his home in Bellerive near Lausanne, he wept and said it was the most beautiful and the most purely Russian creation of our ballet. Stravinsky related that recollection, published in Expositions and Developments, to his longtime confidant, Robert Kraft. And a year after the debut of Les Noces, Sergei Diaghilev brought a world of elegant and even risqué French sophistication to the stage for his next new major ballet. Could it be at all possible to envisage anything so completely different from Les Noces as this?